Good afternoon. My name is James Wafula of the African Climate Leadership Program. Welcome to my webinar series on vermicomposting. I am the owner and CEO of a startup known as California Vermi Farm that deals in the production of improved fertilizers. I am also a climate innovations researcher with the African Climate Leadership Program, and I really appreciate you joining us today. I have entitled this presentation, The Benefits of Vermicomposting for Urban and Rural Households. African Climate Leadership Program is run by the International Development Research Center, Canadian-based, whilst the California Vermi Farm is a local enterprise situated in California Village, Trans Nzoia County in Kenya. As a starting point, I will tell you a little bit about myself. 1986, I got my BSc degree. In 1987, I joined the GIZ, Biogas Development Program. 93, I received my MSc from Altenburg University. 94, I joined a local company called Kenital Solar. 96, I taught for a short spell at Kenyatta University. 97, I started my own enterprise known as Solar Home Power. In 2005, I joined the University of Nairobi. Some of the highlights there include being part of the Lighting Africa Laboratory, and being part of the Solar Academy in the physics department. In 2012, I was part of the KEBS Solar and Wind Technical Subcommittee. 2015, I started the Kenya chapter of the Lenses program at the School of Arts and Design. Lenses stands for Learning Network for Sustainable Energy Systems. 2016, I enrolled for my PhD program at the Institute for Climate Change and Adaptation. 2018, I was a Climate Innovations Fellow with AfriClip, dealing in improved fertilizers that are made by earthworms. 2019, I became the CEO of the California Vermi Farm, a vermicomposting startup. What we do at the California Vermi Farm is we produce vermicompost. And with this vermicompost, we also produced vermi-tea. Both the vermicompost and the vermi-tea are effective plant fertilizers that add vigor and vitality to a variety of fruits and vegetables. I have here pilot projects that demonstrate the effect of these fertilizers on spinach, on passion fruits, and on strawberries, and a variety of other crops. Now, in a nutshell, what do we do at the California Vermi Farm? We take our earthworms, we add them to our substrate, which in our case is kitchen domestic waste and livestock manure, and we produce our vermicast. Vermicast, it can be used interchangeably with caution with vermicompost. Now, in order to produce this optimally, we have to look at certain parameters, and these include the temperature of the vermi bedding, the moisture content of the vermi bedding, the aeration that takes place within the vermi bedding, and the pH value of the vermi bedding. The sort of earthworms that we use is the Icenia foetida, also referred to as the red wriggler. This is a composting earthworm that is renowned for its prolific nature in reproducing itself. Other sorts of earthworms include the African night crawler, the scientific name is the Eudrilus eugene, and the Peronyx excavatus, the Indian earthworm. The type of systems that we use at the California Vermi Farm, we use the wooden crates used for breeding of our earthworms and for production of our vermicompost. The wooden crate on the right measures 1 meter by 1 meter by just about 2 meters. And of course, all locally made materials. I also want you to note that It is placed in underneath a water tank, largely to control the ambient environment within which it is placed. We want it under shade, and we don't want too much rainwater getting into the vermi bedding. Other kinds of vermi reactors that we find locally are the ones made out of PVC bins. The picture you see here is one of Joe's red earthworm farm in Ruaka, Nairobi. Joe is a friend of mine. He's one of the pioneer earthworm farmers in the country. And this is just one of his vermi reactors. These are PVC bins. As we can see, there are 3 of them vertically and 4 horizontally, making 12 of them. In each of these PVC bin, we've got the vermi bedding and covered by the hay. I also want you to note that the PVC bins are placed on some sturdy metal frames, and note also that it's placed in a pretty much secure environment, secure in terms of the interference with the ambient environment. We keep the rain out, and we keep a lot of heat out. Several people have started this project. Here we find Miss Dorcas inoculating her own vermiculture units using the PVC bins. Miss Dorcas is the lady on the left. Lives 1 kilometer from Kitale town. Here we find another lady, Miss Teresia, with her vermiculture unit, lives 12 kilometers from Kitale town. And she does this in some rented premises. Here we have Miss Lillian with her 6 PVC containers in what appears to be her front veranda or front porch, if you will. We have here a system belonging to Tony, a friend of mine, who carries out his vermicomposting units in several types of units, actually. These are made out of wooden offcuts. He has PVC bins as well. And he also some repurposed concrete tanks that he uses. Now, the topics that we are going to look into, we want to discuss what is vermicomposting, the important parameters required for successful vermicomposting, the anatomy of a vermi bed. When we are building the vermi bed in our homesteads, what do we look into? How do we do it? Benefits of vermicomposting, benefits to the homeowner, benefits to the soil, benefits to the plants, etc. And supposing you want to get started with a pilot project, how would you go about it? We'll take a look at that. And then it's good to see what others are doing as well across the globe. And I have here 3 examples of what people are doing in 3 parts of the globe. I think you'll find interesting. And then we look at some frequently asked questions, a bunch of questions which I have asked, and I will respond to myself. Should you feel like asking me any questions, you can also send them to me. Now, what is vermicomposting? Vermicomposting is a process of turning organic debris into worm castings. Worm castings are the vermicompost, are the manure that we want. In vermicomposting, the focus is on processing the waste, as compared to vermiculture, whose focus is on raising of the earthworms for resale. In some jurisdictions, in some environments, we have a lot of fishing taking place, and some people raise earthworms especially for that. I'd like you to note that in vermicomposting, earthworm size and their reproductive rates are frequently lower than those of the same species raised in vermiculture systems. Now, the important parameters required for successful vermicomposting, we have to look at the temperature. We want to ensure that the temperature of our vermi bed is as much as possible, stays within 16 to 26 degrees centigrade. Anything above that, and you slow down the production of your vermicompost. We want to ensure that our moisture content of our vermi bedding stays between 60 and 90%. and we'll take a look at how to do some calculation on that. We want to ensure that we don't have too much light in those premises. Again, that can be easily controlled. At the same time, light can be used for your own benefit when it comes to harvesting of the earthworm. Harvesting really means separating the earthworms from the vermicompost. We want to have good aeration within the vermibedding. It's important to note that the earthworms breathe through a moist environment via their skins. So the air has to be dissolved in the moisture to enable them to breathe. We want to regulate the pH of the vermibedding. And we simply do that by taking a good look at the sort of foods that we place in the vermibedding. Some foods are slightly acidic and they may not be conducive for earthworm reproduction. And these are citrus fruits, lemons, oranges, pineapples. We don't want to have those in our bedding. Other kinds of foods that slow down the reproduction include the garlic and onions. And finally, the important parameter we want to look into is the vermibed itself, the food material. The vermibed eventually ends up being the food material for the earthworms. And when we're looking at the vermibed, we look at the carbon nitrogen content, and we're looking at the bulking potential of the vermibedding, and we're looking at its absorbency. We will take a closer look at this. Now, vermibedding is any biodegradable material that provides the worms with a relatively stable habitat. Important word here is biodegradable. The habitat must have the following characteristics. Again, I will repeat, must have high absorbency because worms breathe through their skins and therefore must have a moist environment in which to live. You have to maintain that. Must have good bulking potential. We want air to be able to flow freely within the vermibedding, and must have a high carbon to nitrogen ratio. And these are some of what we want to look into. Examples of vermibedding. We have here a table that in the first column is bedding material. Dry cow manure, for instance, has medium to good absorbency, has good bulking potential, and has a carbon nitrogen ratio of between 22 and 56. How to read this? This means 22 carbons for every nitrogen at the low side, or 22 or 56 carbons for every nitrogen on the high side. That's the dry cow manure. When we look at our sawdust, for instance, it's a poor medium when it comes to absorbency, a poor medium as well when it comes to bulking potential. Look at the carbon nitrogen ratio, very low levels of nitrogen, very low levels of nitrogen, high levels of carbon. Now, to fully understand how to make your vermibed requires hands-on experience. And in a little while, you should be able to get the particle size to be within 1 inch to 3 inches. The ideal is 1 to 2 inches. Have the carbon nitrogen ratio at 30 to 1. Anything between 20 to 1 and 40 to 1 is acceptable. Have the bulk density of your vermibedding at between 11 kilograms per 20-liter bucket, 7 to 11 kilograms per 20-liter bucket. Ideal, of course, is 9 kilograms per 20-liter bucket. The porosity or the airspace has to be ideally 50%, and the moisture content has to be ideally 80%. Now, let's take a look at how to quickly determine how to estimate what is the bulk density, what is the porosity, what is the moisture content, and even the carbon nitrogen ratio of a certain vermibed that you desire to set up. How to measure bulk density? We will need a bucket, we will need a weighing scale, and we will need a vermicompost. And we start off by weighing the empty bucket, and then we fill the empty bucket with compost, the vermicomposted material. And of course, the weight of the compost then becomes the difference between the two. And the volume of the compost is what is the volume of the bucket. And quite simply, the bulk density of that material is the weight of the compost divided by the volume of the compost. And we have an example here. If the weight of the bucket is 1 kilogram, the weight of the bucket with compost is 10 kilograms. The weight of the compost is 9 kilograms. The difference between the two. Volume of the compost is the volume of the bucket, 20 liters. And that gives us a bulk density of just about 0.5 kilogram per liter. Now keep this in mind, 0.5 kilogram per liter. We'll be comparing this to other figures later. How to measure the porosity, that is the airspace within your vermi bedding. We will need a bucket, we'll need a weighing scale, we need a vermicompost, and we need some water. And we start off by weighing the bucket with the compost, okay? And then we fill the bucket that has the compost, we fill it with water. So the weight of the water is the difference between the two. And we can get the volume of the water because from the simple expression, density is equal to mass over volume, then we can get the volume of the water, which equals the volume of the pores. We know what the volume of the compost is. So the porosity is volume of the water divided by the volume of the compost, and multiply that by 100 to get a percentage. And we have an example. If the weight of the bucket with the compost is 10 kilograms, weight of the bucket with compost and water is 21 kilograms. Therefore, the weight of the water is 11 kilograms. The volume of the water, it follows, is 11 liters. Volume of the compost is the volume of the bucket. Therefore, the porosity is 11 over 20, which comes to 55%. We want loosely packed material. We don't want it very tightly packed. And with practice, one will simply be able to quickly tell how to differentiate between a loosely packed material and a tightly packed material. How to calculate the moisture content of our vermi bedding. Again, we will require a weighing scale, the vermicompost. In this instance, we require an oven that can heat to 110 degrees centigrade and a ceramic container. And the experiment is quite easy. The procedure is quite simple, really. We get the wet weight of the vermicompost. And then we take this vermicompost, we place it in our ceramic container, and we heat it overnight at 110 degrees centigrade. And the following day, we weigh what the dry weight is. And simply the moisture content is the wet weight minus the dry weight divided by the wet weight. Multiply that by 100 and you get your percentage. Now, this is an interesting one, how to estimate the carbon content of your vermi bedding. In this case, we will require a weighing scale, the vermicompost, the oven that can incinerate now to 500 degrees centigrade, and ceramic container. And we'll be using a formula extracted from a reference I have provided in the reference page. And the formula states that the percentage of carbon in your vermi bedding is equal to the percentage of volatile solids divided by 1.8. Now, how do we get the volatile solids, the percentage of volatile solids? This is 100 minus percentage of the ash. And what is the ash? The ash is the material that we heat to 500 degrees centigrade and leave it overnight. So we heat our vermicompost in, and it turns into ash. We get the weight of that. 100 minus that ash is our percent volatile solids. Our percent carbon follows from that formula. It's important to note the ease with which compounds degrade generally follows the order. Carbohydrates degrade faster than hemicellulose, which degrades faster than cellulose, degrades faster than lignin. Lignin, of course, is the woody material found in the barks of trees. Fruits and vegetables are easily degraded because they contain mostly simple carbohydrates, so they're easy. Whilst the leaves and stems and nutshells and bark and of the trees decompose more slowly because they're higher in this cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. I have provided a table here that will need some studying, but after one or two tries, it gets quite easy to read. In the first column, we have the feedstock of the vermibedding, those that are high in carbon and those that are high in nitrogen. And then we have the moisture content of that particular feedstock at that particular time. And we have the estimated carbon-nitrogen ratio. So this is something you simply look up in a book. Yeah, there's no way you're going to be able to calculate this all the time. And then we have got the bulk density. In this particular case, it's measured in pounds per cubic yard. And I have some examples here. Take the leaves that fall in our gardens, for instance. They have a bulk density of about 0.1 kilograms per liter. If we take newspaper, has a bulk density of just about the same thing, 0.1 kilograms per liter. We take our dairy manure, has a bulk density of 0.7 kilograms per liter. Now, remember what the ideal bulk density was earlier on. We had seen it's just about 0.5, precisely 0.45 kilograms per liter. So it's your task, if you're going to make a vermibed from these three materials, to be able to mix it in such a way that you are getting something close to that 0.5 kilograms per liter. And that only comes with practice. It's not something you can learn theoretically. Now, let's get into something a little bit easier. Which are these biodegradable materials? We have crop residues. These you can find in several places, market centers, both rural and urban centers will have lots of these. The weed biomass, again, we've got some invasive species of weeds like the Tithonia diversifolia used as a fencing material, can be used as a biodegradable material. Vegetable waste, again, found in several places, specifically market centers on market days and other centers in urban areas. The shrub trimmings from your garden, waste from the agro industries. Here we got a whole bunch of tomatoes. Biodegradable urban and rural household waste. This is our kitchen waste. Of course, what is missing here is the livestock waste, which I've taken for granted. For the rural homeowners, they'll be having livestock waste as their predominant biodegradable material. Now, we want to look at the procedure for feeding the earthworms. Earthworms will consume many types of dried animal manures and biodegradables. Okay, this includes pig manure, horse manure, donkey, goat manure, sheep manure, and the most available, of course, is our livestock manure. The feeds that contain high amounts of carbohydrates should first be composted beyond the heating stage. That's an important point. We don't take any wet material and feed it directly to the earthworms, because anytime you compose something, it goes through a heating stage where the temperatures can rise to over 70 degrees centigrade, which is a good thing, as we will see later. Getting the temperature to rise to 70 degrees centigrade gets rid of a whole host of pathogens that can cause harm to the human being. When you're feeding, the feed and supplement should be spread out on top of the bedding, about 3 or 4 inches deep across the surface of your PVC bin or your wooden crate. Your food scraps should be pre-composted or covered to prevent fruit flies and other pests. This is quite normal in household waste. You'll normally compile it or gather it in one spot before disposing of it in your preferably earthworm bins. Earthworm should be fed at least once or twice a week. And when all the feed has been consumed, you simply feed it again. It's important to note that you should not overfeed because if the feed stays too long in the vermi bed, if you put layers that are much higher than 3 to 4 inches, the conditions may become anaerobic, causing odorous conditions, and can also become acidic. Odorous conditions invite other vermin into your vermi beds as well, which is something you want to avoid. So you've set up your vermi bedding, you have created your vermi bed, you have inoculated it with earthworms, and now you want to harvest. Harvesting beds or bins may be accomplished by several methods. One of the commonly used techniques is using either brilliant sunlight or bright light shining overhead to drive the worms deep into the pile to escape the light. The worms are sensitive to light. They run away from the light. So once your bed is fully matured, you place it in the sunlight, and naturally the earthworms burrow deeper into the vermi bedding. This allows you to skim off the top surface. Which is now your vermicast. If you cannot drag out the container, simply collect some, put it out in the sunlight. You might even be required to sieve it at some stage, sieve whatever material you have collected. Now, as you gently remove the top inch of the bedding pile, the earthworms go deeper right to the bottom of the bedding. And once they get to the bottom of the bedding, they form a huge pile such as this. You've now successfully separated the earthworms from the vermi bedding. It's important not to leave these in this condition. The fresh vermi bedding must be ready to be able to accommodate these harvested earthworms. And that's what I've mentioned here, placing of the worms in new containers which have already pre-soaked bedding. Now, what to avoid, the sort of pests to avoid. The pests include mites, birds, and ants. Of these ones, one of the most dangerous are the ants, the safari ants. You want to avoid as much as possible an infestation of the safari ants in your bedding. Once your bedding has been infested with safari ants, that's the end of it. So you really want to avoid that. And it's not so hard to do that. It's quite easy. To prevent birds, it's quite simple. A wire netting can around the bins can prevent that. To prevent your ants and several other types of dangerous insects, you can sprinkle insecticide at the base of the bins, not within the vermi bed. You sprinkle it at the base of the bins. If you don't have insecticide on hand, you can use your ordinary ash generated from wood fires or charcoal fires. That is also very effective. What are the benefits of vermicomposting? I start off with this saying by somebody called Hippocrates. This is the same Hippocrates, I think, who lent his name to the Hippocratic Oath taken by the doctors. All right, so it must be some serious Greek guy. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. And The first advantage of vermicomposting is in producing healthy foods. So it enhances plant growth. All kinds of fruits and vegetables can be raised with vermicomposting. It transforms raw organic waste into biologically stable material, implying, of course, that the raw waste is unstable, biologically unstable, which is true. Creates odors, has infestations, flies, etc. Reduces the need for chemical fertilizers. That is important for the environmentalists amongst us. It has enhanced nutrient content, hence the enhanced plant growth. Easier to handle than manure and other raw organic materials. Stores well and is odor free. You can pack it up in sacks and store it, or in crates and containers and store it, either for transportation or to other areas or for use later in your farm. Environmental, it is friendly on the groundwater as opposed to the other fertilizers. And in terms of our climate change, it also mitigates against the production of methane gas, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide. What are the benefits to the homeowner of earthworm farming? You can produce your vermicompost and you can pack it if you have enough of it and sell it. I'm currently selling at 99 Kenya shillings per kilogram. 99 Kenya shillings per kilogram. So 10 kilograms will cost just about 1,000 bob. From this vermicompost, you can make vermi-tea. Vermi-tea is much easier to use mechanized equipment when you are fertilizing your crops. Now, how to produce vermi-tea? For production of the vermi-tea, 0.5 kilogram of vermicast for every gallon of water. A gallon, as we know, is about 5 liters. And mix that thoroughly overnight. Into this mixture, add a tablespoon of molasses. And for me, a 50-liter container will cost 4,990. We can produce the earthworms and sell them to other farmers. A kilogram of earthworms is 2,500 bob, and you can transport it to any part of the country using our courier services. Simply harvest the earthworms, pack them in some sack, in 2 kilogram or 1 kilogram containers. When you've packed them, they are packed with the vermi bedding. And to secure them, we put them in these perforated buckets, sealed tightly. Of course, airflow is quite free in this bucket, and this can be transported in our courier services. How do you get started? Before you get started, you should have in mind, where are you going to carry this out in your homestead? Which room are you going to use? Front yard, backyard, veranda, empty room somewhere? You have to decide yourself. It has to be protected from the environment. What sort of food are you going to be giving the earthworms? What are you going to be using? Just your kitchen leftovers? Or are you going to collect others from the market? What sort of reactor are you going to use? Are you going to use the bins? Are you going to use the wooden crates? How are you going to utilize the vermicast that you produce in your own garden, or transport it elsewhere in some other premises that you have, or sell it? How are you going to prepare your vermibed? Then you prepare your vermibed. You prepare it, you moisten it, and you place an order. And within a week of placing your order, you've got your earthworms, which you can inoculate into the vermibed. And it pays to keep abreast of what's going on, the do's and don'ts of how to carry out this vermicomposting procedure. Remember, there's no school for this. You learn by doing. You learn by starting. Supposing you are elsewhere outside the country, if you're in the neighboring country across the border, you will need an import license from your country. I'm told they're valid for 90 days. As for me, I will need to provide you with an invoice, and I will need to get an export license from my country. And finally, I will need to get certification from the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services, just to certify that whatever I am exporting out of the country does not contaminate the soils in the other country. And quite as simple as that, you receive your earthworms, even if it takes 2 weeks on transit, there's enough food in there packed with them to sustain them for that period of time. Look quickly at what others are doing, and this is quite interesting. I have 3 examples here. This is an example from an entrepreneur in New Zealand who came up with an aesthetic design of a vermi-reactor. And this is just about waist high, as you can see from the picture. And it is a continuous flow system. That means he first sets up the vermi-reactor, and he places the initial bedding into the vermi-reactor. Into this, he will place the earthworms and gradually fill this with his domestic waste. After some period of time, he simply releases the lower portion of this vermi-reactor and harvests the vermicast, believing, of course, that a good number of earthworms will have migrated to where the fresh food is. And you can look him up on his website. Unfortunately, however, he does not sell this to this part of the world. However, the website has good material that anybody who thinks about fabricating can take a look at what this guy has done. We look at what this guy did and he is doing, and we need to study this for a while. This is Tom Hurley, president of Worm Power in upstate New York. You can look him up on this website. To begin with the picture on the left, I just want to highlight what is the size of his vermi-reactor: 60 meters in length and just about 2 meters in width. Again, it's just about waist high, above waist high. And from his website, I gather he has 21 of these, easily the largest producer of vermicomposting in the US, and has a number of clients. And on the picture on the right, he explains how he harvests his vermicast from the continuous flow system. It's not manually done. This is all mechanically done. Simply put, there's a scraper at the bottom of the vermi-reactor, and every so often he will scrape off the bottom 2 or so inches as he continues feeding on the top surface. And there's a whole lot that goes into this. It's all there in his website, and he also sells his materials online. And I wanted to highlight what are the costs of some of these products that he's selling. A gallon is 5 liters of vermi tea. From his online store, it's $34 US. You know, anyone who lives in Kenya will tell you just move the decimal place 2 places and you get your Kenya shillings. He's 1.3 kilograms of vermicast at $14 US. 1.3 costs more than a kilo of sugar. Okay. We have Bursin Karababa, some lady in Turkey. You can look her up on this website. Again, she, I believe, borrowed the system from the gentleman in New York. Hers is also a continuous flow system, and it looks almost identical in terms of the layout. And her website is in Turkish. You can simply change the language to English and read about her story. She produces vermicast and exports to the European countries, including Germany. Beautiful website that she has, much more attractive than Tom Hurley's website. However, they're all good. I should mention, when you log on to Tom's website, he might require, there's a dialog box that requires you to enter the state that you're in. Choose any state. They're all American states. Choose any state and the information will come. Back to Brusinha Karababa. In addition to selling to the export market, she sells these worm towers. These are now for the domestic users. And she exports. You can buy them online, even when you're in this part of the world. This one retails at just about 15,000 Kenya shillings. Right. Frequently asked questions. This is just about my last slide. What are materials needed in vermicomposting? That one I have answered in the previous slides, whether it's food materials, whether it's the fabrication. What type of container should I use for vermicomposting? That one I have answered as well. Either wooden crates, or the PVC material. How do I set up a vermicomposting container? There you have it. What type of worm should I use? I gave you all sorts of worms. We have the Icenia or the African nightcrawler. What should I feed the worms? I said that. What should I avoid? I said that. No citrus fruits, no garlic, no onions. How do I harvest the compost? We have looked at that. How do I ascertain the quality of my vermicompost? I mentioned in passing, almost in passing, the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services. They offer testing, and the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, they also offer, they'll do the testing. They have the testing labs. The good thing about the CALRO, which is the latter, you can send your sample there by courier and make your payment via M-Pesa services. So you don't need to go to Nairobi, or you don't need to go to where their labs are. Do it right from your hometown. Is there any risk to human health associated with handling of vermicompost? Oh, okay. I mentioned you're dealing with waste material, livestock waste, kitchen waste, and it can get really messy. No doubt some of it will have bacteria and other pathogens in them, the E. coli, the bacillus, the flagella, etc. Now, that's where composting before vermicomposting comes in handy. Composting before vermicomposting. When you compost the material, you actually the temperatures rise to over 70 degrees, and that temperature rise plays a part in reducing the pathogens that could be found in your vermicompost. There's a term used known as the PFRP, pathogen count or something, reduction of pathogen count by the vermicomposting. The picture you see here is what is known as, this is a composting thermometer, and it has about a 3-foot probe, and what happens is that you stick this into your compost as you're preparing the vermibedding. And here it's in Fahrenheit. It's reading just about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it stays at 160 for 3 days, it can stay for much longer, but at least for 3 days, then you'll be sure you'll have destroyed a good number of pathogens in your material. What are the advantages and disadvantages of continuous flow system? Advantages, well, plenty. You're producing a whole lot of vermicast. Disadvantage, you will need a whole lot of vermibedding to actually, and you will need to know where your vermibedding is coming from, where your feed stuff is coming from. So that's one disadvantage, but all the rest of it is advantage. If, of course, you have developed a market that you can use that you have to sell your products. What is the difference between vermicompost and vermicast? Right, good question, if I may say. The vermicast is made out of the vermibedding, and vermibedding is gradually converted into vermicast. So there'll be certain percentages of vermibedding and vermicompost and vermicast in the material. A vermicompost is really a mixture of vermicast and vermibedding, undigested vermibedding. So the purer you get to a pure earthworm excrement, which is a vermicast, that the better it is. Anything less than 100% vermicast has got some vermibedding in it, still undigested, and is referred to as a vermicompost. What are the benefits to the soil? What are the benefits to the plant? What are the usage quantities? Benefits to the soil. The soil will not get acidic no matter how much you're using. The water retention properties of the soil are improved. What are benefits to the plant? The nutrients that are added to the plant that are easily absorbed by the plant. What usage quantities should I use? Here again, I will leave it up to you. You actually learn by doing. Some examples of using a handful for every seedling, handful of vermicompost for every seedling. Some other people will say their best results came when they mixed 50% of potting material as vermicast and 50% as soil. Then they get the best material, the best product in terms of plants being grown. That I will leave up to you. My final slide, a number of references from the IPCC, yeah, discussing emissions from livestock and manure, and discussing emissions from the nitrous oxide. This book, On Farm Composting Handbook, very handy, can be purchased online with Amazon. You will get it. There's a link here I've put to a document by Mary Ward, who speaks about the effects of chemical fertilizers on the groundwater. Is there any link between chemical fertilizers and cancer? You read this for yourself and make up your own mind. And then this link is a document by Rhonda Sherman, works at some university, I think North Carolina State University. She's been at this for well over 20 years, close to 30 years, and she has a lot of interesting insights. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. You can reach me on these contacts. Visit my Facebook page. You'll see the sort of development I have made to date. Follow me on my LinkedIn site and give me a call anytime you're thinking about vermicomposting. God bless you. Thank you.